The farm that I'm walking away from is known locally as Skull Farm. The Screaming Skull. Now, in the 19th century, that farm became a massive tourist attraction. They came here to the farm that I am walking towards now. Now, it is a working farm, people are living in there, so I don't want to get too close. You do have to walk around it, so I'll get close enough. But the reason people were coming here in the 19th century was to see a skull that would sit in one of the windows facing out. Now, it's said that this skull, got to be careful of my feet, really bad hiking in the peaks with a bad foot. This skull was cursed. Now, to get into the story, I'll tell you the story behind the skull. Nobody really knows who the skull belonged to, or even how long it was there. I am using past tense, as I don't believe the skull's there anymore. There's two theories. One is that it belonged to Ned Dixon. The skull is nicknamed Dickies Skull, and that's why they think it's called Dickies, because of Ned Dixon. Now, he was away fighting in the 16th century in France in the Huguenot Wars. I'm not sure I'm saying that right. It is a war I know nothing about. And this was his farm. And when he came back into the peaks to his farm, he found that his cousin had taken it over. Now, his cousin was, look at that, look how beautiful it is there. Not me, obviously. His cousin was a bit of a scumbag, don't you know? And he is, in all the writings I said, it's his murderous cousin. Ooh, what a tagline to be dealt. And when he came back, his cousin, not taking kindly to Ted wanting his farm foot, he murdered him and buried him on the grounds that we're walking. But it's said that his skull, or indeed his corpse, refused to be buried, and every time it would come back out to the surface and find its way into the house. Ooh. And his skull terrorised, oh, forgive me, technical errors, it's the wind, it's blowing stuff everywhere. It terrorised his cousin, and his cousin left, and Ted had his farm back. Jesus, left, there's no bridge down there. I'm like risking life and limb here. Oh, all the things. This isn't a walk. The bridge literally sways as you're on it, and I'm a heavy boy. What is going on? This is not a generous footpath. Now, the other story, and this one has more credence to it, because I'm using the skull in past tense. which gives you the impression nobody knows where it is anymore. That is correct. But one of the last sightings of it was a medical chap did some tests on it and found out that it was an 18-year-old girl. Now, the other story behind the skull is that two sisters lived in that farm and they fell out over a guy, and one of the sisters murdered the other one, and again buried in the ground, refused to be buried. All the folklore surrounding the skull is that it refused to be buried. So this story actually took off in the 19th century. I've said before, they're all lunatics in the 19th century. Anything but for a bit of entertainment. But the subway at the start, where I took you through underneath, I hope I put it in the intro, that was originally meant to be up near the farm, but the project became cursed and workmen became gravely ill, and the foundations would sink no matter what they would do. Workmen's tools would go missing, sludgy, and it became such a news story, morning, that if you just people are staring at you, just say good morning. Freaks them out. It became such a news story that the skull became like a part of pop culture in the 19th century. I don't know what phrase to use. And people would turn up to the farm where we just were. I hope they didn't battle through all the crap that I did to see Dickies Skull. And it became such a thing that a poem was written about it in the 19th century called An Address to Dickie. So there's a report of an author coming to the farm and asking the then owner, Adam Fox I believe, what he knew about the skull, and the owner said the skull had been here for over a century, which would make the skull dating back to the 16th century, so that would give credence again to the Dickies Skull, Ned Dixon. But as these things go on, the folklore grew and grew, and certainly in the 19th century people had active imaginations. I think people in the 19th century just looked for anything to do. I think it's before the Beatles came along, people had nothing to do. So let me show you the reservoir. So Coombs Reservoir came into the folklore because it's said that the skull was thrown in here. The farm's only like a couple hundred yards up the road, and it said all the fish died in Coombs Reservoir, so they had to go back in and get the skull out. Another story is the local churchyard, which I have seen, I can't remember where it is. It was buried in there twice, and both times one of the fiercest storms of this area came in and it wiped out so much cattle, and the cattle that weren't wiped out got a disease and they blamed the skull, and so they never moved the skull from the window up at the farm. But it's a forgotten about Peak District folk tale. I've only through doing research for this have I heard about it, and I think it's fairly obvious that nobody knows where the skull is. It is interesting to think that there was a skull, it did belong to somebody, and it is somewhere now, but nobody knows where. Lots of stories say that it's buried on top of the hill, so if I show you the farm again on top of that hill, it said it's buried there, but nobody knows for sure. And that is the tale of Skull Farm, the Screaming Skull. I hope you enjoyed. There's one more in this series. It should be about tomorrow, I think, so I hope you enjoy.